You are listening to Dark Notes podcast. I'm Lisa, and I'm here with my partner. I'm Shane.
Hello.
Today's episode is
Schools.
all right. I was laughing because I'm like, what the hell are we calling the episode? Like, all right. All right. All right. We dug up some strange accounts. Do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first, and then I'll go.
All right. This one is from When Monsters Come to Life by Steph Young.
Okay.
And it's called, the title is Gnomes.
Oh, I love it.
In 1979, in a park in Nottingham, England, a large group of school children saw the most fantastical sight. More than 50 gnome men emerged from the woods to the sound of a bell ringing. Each one of these gnome men had long white beards and a red hat. They were not walking, but rather they sat side by side, two each inside red bubble cars, and they began to chase the group of school children.
Oh
It
my God.
sounds for any British person reading this to be just like an episode from the very popular children's TV show Naughty, except the school children's headmaster was convinced the children were telling about what they believed they saw that day. It happened on October the 29th, 1979, and it took place in the swampy section of the park. While it indeed sounds as if it must have been a group hoax thought up by the children, unbeknownst, this would turn out to be just one of the sightings of gnomes in the park. As for this sighting, the children were aged between 8 and 10 years of age. It was approximately 4:30 p.m. when they were there, and the light was fading fast, but it was still light enough to see. They were in a no-access part of the park, which was fenced off to prevent people from going into it, but the children had climbed through. It was swampy inside and lined with trees, and suddenly they saw the white-bearded men, and the children estimated that there were at least 50 to 60 of them.
Oh man.
They all had long white beards and wrinkly faces. They all wore identical long pointed hats. They all wore blue tops, and they all wore yellow stockings. They were seated in small red bubble cars, had no steering wheels. Instead, there was a handle for them to turn to change direction in the car. The children said they counted up to 30 of these red bubble cars. Each car had 2 of these little men seated inside of them. The cars moved silently. There was no sound of any engines. The cars moved quite fast, and somehow the cars jumped over any logs or branches in their way. For some reason, the children felt that the strange men only came out because it was twilight, that they would not come out in broad daylight. Some of the cars chased the children. The cars would even glide over the swampy water with ease. The cars left no mud tracks in the swamp. The children estimated that the encounter lasted at least 15 minutes. The following day, the children were quick to tell their classmates about the startling experience in the swamp. As soon as the headmaster story, he decided to interview them all separately himself to reveal that they were telling fibs and classmates along. The headmaster recorded his interviews with all the children. Then he sent the tapes to Marjorie Johnson, the secretary of the Nottingham-based Fray Investigation Society. He wrote to her accompanying the tapes said, I think the tapes reveal the wide measure of think that's a misspelling. Sorry. Corroboration between the children as well as the fluency with which they were able to describe the events. I remain skeptical as to the explanation of what they saw, but I am also convinced that the children were describing a real occurrence. Professor Simon Young, researcher into fairy encounters, transcribed the tapes. One of the school children said, "There's wire around the fence. That's where they get in." Another of the children said they fell in the swamp when the gnomes were chasing them. One child says they saw the gnomes coming out of holes in the tops of the trees. When the headmaster asked where they live, one child said in trees and bushes. In gaps in the tops of the trees is where they went in. Apparently, they were climbing up into the trees and going in and emerging from holes in the trunks or in the branches. For Marjorie Johnson of the Fairy Investigation Society, she was perhaps not as surprised as the children and their headmaster, for this was not the first encounter with gnomes that she had heard of in that park. She said that she had received a number of strange reports from the same park. One of these included an account that came from a Mrs. Jean Dixon who lived in Stapleford near Nottingham. Her experience happened not long before the children's, and she reported that she had been telepathically led around the park from one spot to another by a group of gnomes. Each time she arrived at the spot they took her to, she said they produced a feather for her to find. She felt that the gnomes seemed very eager to show her various scenes and objects that delighted them. Another account Mrs. Johnson collected about the park came from Mrs. C. George of Stapleford way back in 1900. She was passing Wallington Park's gates when she saw some little men dressed like policemen just standing inside the lodge entrance. They were smiling and looking very happy. They hadn't any wings, and as far as I can remember, they were between 2 and 3 feet in height, Johnson's report. In 2015, an Australian lady wrote into Malcolm's Musing, an Australian blog, saying, "I am now in my late 60s. The experience took place in 1984. She was living in Queensland at the time and was divorced and lived with her 2 young children. I am neither a drinker nor a user of drugs. If asked if I believe in little people, I would unhesitantly have replied no. On the night her experience happened, she had just returned from a short trip away, and her children were still at the neighbors, where they were staying the following morning. So she was alone in the house. As she began to unpack her suitcase in her bedroom, she realized the room seemed unusually bright, and she suddenly became, overwhelmed with exhaustion. So she lay on her back on the bed, and the next thing I knew, I could hear the sound of several voices. They were argumentative and seemed to be telling each other, "Hurry, hurry." I looked down to the source of the voices. There were several small people. They were trying to pull me from the bed, feet first, into the wardrobe. Oddly, she says, I experienced no shock or alarm. Instead, I told myself I was far too heavy for them to move. Now I am of the opinion that these thoughts were not my own. I must have lost consciousness, because the next thing I remember is waking up to find people crowded around me. I was now lying with my head at the foot of the bed. One male was larger than the others and appeared to be the leader. At first, he stared into my eyes with both of his eyes. Then it's a blank, and his position had changed, and he was only looking at me with one of his eyes. Something happened, but I can't remember. The man looked like the typical gnome from storybooks. They were overdressed. Their clothing was suited to a much colder climate. I remember in considerable detail because I did a lot of sewing in those days. Their skin looked weathered, wide cheekbones, wide jaws. Eyes and mouths were long horizontally but narrow vertically. The best way to describe their faces is squashed, as if a heavy weight had been placed on top of their heads. It seemed I was simply a job for them. They seemed a bit nervous, querulous, urging each other, hurry. To my alarm, I saw that they had almost succeeded in pulling my legs from the bed. A surge of adrenaline shot through me. I kicked out at them and jumped from my bed. They muttered between themselves. They looked resigned and sounded bitter. Then they filed into the wardrobe. They seemed to go in as if down a ramp. Afterwards, the shock and terror set in. I suspect now that when the creatures departed, they removed whatever calming influence they'd subjected me to during the ordeal. She found herself wandering outside and standing in the middle of the road, waiting for me to come and pick her up. Her colleague took her to his house for the night. He said the next morning that he had never seen anyone so terrified as he had seen her, standing in the middle of the road, shaking. Many years later, her daughter told her that as a child, she had often seen gnomes. She asked her mother if she remembers how, as a child, she would always run through the hallway of the house. She said now that it was because of the gnome. The lady says, I do not believe in gnome-type entities. Wait, I do not believe the gnome-type entities regard mankind kindly, and if my suspicions are correct, they are workers who are answerable to someone or something else.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
That's along with it. Interesting, right? In little bubble cars.
oh my God. Okay, a couple things. That's the best story we've had on this show with the kids. I would love to see that.
Right?
And yeah, that last line is amazing, that they seem to be
Answering the
and workers. It's the first thing I think of is when Terrence McKenna said he smoked DMT, that you would have
elves.
that a lot of people see the elves or elf-like entities, and he always said they seemed like they're workers, like they're doing something.
Right.
And that part of the experience was that they seem to be making objects, and that they are looking at you like, look, you can do this too, just do it, you know.
Right.
And yeah, that's fascinating. You have to send me that story.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing I think of is, how great is that? Like, with the kids seeing this, you know, if this had been a group of adults, most of the adults would have never said anything. They would have thought I'm going crazy,
Right.
or would be embarrassed to say it. But all these kids just matter of factly, like, yeah, we saw a bunch of gnomes doing this thing, and they were driving around in little red cars.
Yep. And I
That's
like
just
how
the way it is.
the teacher thought to pull all aside separately and kind of get their
It
story.
sounds exactly, and it sounds very similar to like a UFO sighting at a school, where, yeah, let's pull these kids aside and interview them separately and see what they say, you know.
Right.
What year was that? Do you remember?
I think it was 79.
God,
Yeah,
That's
October
so
29th,
great.
1979.
Oh my, and also that there were sightings in that same area.
Right.
Because we've talked about that before, how there seem to be these spots,
Right.
these special spots. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Yeah. The kids seeing this thing, they're not sitting there running it through their filter like we are, through their dogmas and their belief systems. They're just like, oh, I see gnomes with hats and red cars, you know?
Right. I didn't see any steering wheels, but they were in some kind of car.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's so good. Okay, let me go. I have one.
All right.
This is from the excellent Preston Dennet.
Yes.
His book, Schoolyard UFO Encounters, I think. You sent it to me. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Whitsett Elementary School.
Okay.
Some schoolyard UFO encounters are so impressive, they draw the attention of federal officials. This next case, which took place on October 27th, 1955 in Whitsett, North Carolina, is highly reminiscent of the Jerome Elementary School sighting in Marysville, Ohio, 1 year and 5 days earlier. It was around 2:45 p.m., and the principal of the school, H.D. Lambeth Jr., was inside the school when some children ran inside calling for him to come outside. Lambeth went outside and was shocked to see several metallic spherical shaped objects flying overhead. He counted eight of them. He grabbed a pair of binoculars and caught sight of one of the strange crafts, which he said looked like a shiny steel ball. He called out to another teacher who also observed the objects. She timed one of them as it moved across the sky. It took 1.5 minutes, said Lambeth. About 120 students observed the objects. Jenny Engel was among them. She said that most of the student body was there and that everybody was scared and excited. Besides being the principal of the school, H.D. Lambeth was a retired officer from the United States Air Force. He flew 46 combat missions as an aerial observer in World War II. He was familiar with aircraft, but was unable to identify what he was seeing. As Lambeth watched the objects through the binoculars, they began to eject a white, wispy substance. Most appeared to be in 2 to 3 inch strips. They had the appearance of cotton candy and reminded him of Christmas decorations. Miss N.T. Newton lived next to the school. She saw the strange substance covered the school and several surrounding acres. She said it resembled a long roll of cotton candy. As the last of the objects moved overhead, says Lambeth, several students and teachers saw a small gold bronze colored object fall into the woods nearby. Meanwhile, the children ran excitedly around the playground, collecting the cotton candy substance in their hands. One of the children put the substance in his mouth and reported that it had a salty taste. Lambeth tried to stop him, but the kid had already eaten it.
Oh, God.
Lambeth tried burning the substance with a match, causing it and a fibrous odor. The entire incident lasted about 25 minutes. After the objects were gone, the 120 students were dismissed early and sent home. Lambeth was a trained observer and knew that he had seen something very unusual. He collected samples of the angel hair and arranged to have them sent off to Burlington Laboratories for chemical analysis. Meanwhile, a search party was sent out to the woods where the object was seen coming down. No evidence of the object was found. Later, the results from Burlington Labs revealed that the samples did not contain cotton, cellulose, or any commercial synthetic. The laboratory said the material most closely resembled spider webs, and that they should send a sample to a biologist knowledgeable about spiders. A sample was sent to a biologist who said the fibers were too even in size to be spider webs, and that such a large fall of web-like material should have contained spiders.
Right.
The incident resulted in a huge wave of publicity, both national and international. Lambeth received one letter from the Italian Navy expressing interest. At some point, the U.S. Air Force also expressed an official interest in the case. They sent Captain Murray Thornton, Executive Director of Civil Defense for Greensboro and Guilford counties, to investigate. I grew up in Guilford County, by the way.
Yeah.
Captain Thornton visited the school and spoke with Lambeth and some of the other witnesses. Captain Thornton was skeptical and said, "I'm inclined to think that the silver balls were reflections of the sun on whatever the stuff was at higher altitudes." Lambeth disagreed. In response to Thornton's statement, Lambeth replied, "It would ease a person's mind to believe that, but I'm not convinced it fits all the facts."
Nice.
The silver things we saw were moving in all directions, and there was hardly any wind or turbulence that would have moved wispy stuff like that. Besides, the teachers and the students said the objects looked too solid to be just reflections. Lambeth also says that a carefully wrapped sample of the angel hair that he collected and placed in his wallet disappeared without his knowledge or consent. There was something mysterious going on, he said.
That's right. I love how the kids eat it and stuff. I love that.
The one you've got the one kid who fucking eats it, you know. I love it.
But spider webbing, that's weird, right?
Yeah. There's been a few accounts of that. I remember reading about one in France over a house that ejected an angel hair like substance. Sounds like the same thing, you know, and they said it just went everywhere, but that it slowly dissolved into nothing, you know. It's like, what's the purpose, you know?
Right.
It's insane. And what is it? What is
right,
it?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I can just imagine. Can you imagine 120 kids witnessing this? Just
running around. Like,
yeah. Oh my God. I love it.
Some are crying, some are like
some are
putting
crying,
it on
some
each
are
other.
laughing.
Like, turn each other.
Yeah.
And then you have Mikey who eats it.
Yeah, a little. The ADHD kid who eats it.
All right. This is from the same book by Steph Young. This one's called The Black Flash. Okay. Was the Black Flash a long, drawn-out Halloween prank? Natural monster. The town's police chief said he identified who was behind it, but he had taken this to his grave, naming the parties. Others are firmly of the opinion that the identity was something otherworldly, something that a name couldn't be given to, although it did indeed have several names given by the local people, and they varied from the Devil of the Dunes, the Provincetown Phantom, and finally to the one which stuck, the Black Flash. He was named as such due to his appearance. It all began when school children walking home from school alone began to be confronted by someone or something jumping out on them in the winter darkness. The children all described how it would appear right in front of them, seemingly out of nowhere. An impossibly tall and inexplicably speedy figure, dressed all in black, with a black face and flashing silver eyes.
Oh my God.
All right. They all said it had pointed ears. The figure appeared to be human in form, and yet No human the children had ever seen before was that tall. Accompanied by this unusual appearance was a strange sound of loud buzzing. Yet as fast as the figure appeared, it would disappear, flitting from place to place and laughing maniacally as it jumped around.
Oh my God.
Its speed and agility was unmatched to anything the children had ever seen before. They all said. Witnesses, both children and adults, began to describe seeing it on one side of town, only for another witness to report seeing it seconds later on the other side of town, which would seem impossible. It was 1939 in the town of Provincetown, Massachusetts. And some folks said it was a mad person, while others said it was a prankster deliberately trying to scare people. Some, however, believed it was the devil himself, armed with supernatural power. The police veered on the side of it being a prankster, and the chief of police, Anthony Travers, even claimed he knew who was doing it and had spoken to them about it. He had a talk with them. He would not give their names, however. This was back when the town had a population of around 4,000 residents. One October night, when a young woman called Maria Costa was walking home alone from work, she claimed that an unnaturally tall figure jumped out from the bushes at her as she walked along the main street. She described it as incredibly tall, covered head to toe in some kind of black clothing with glowing eyes. As it jumped out at her, she fled screaming into a nearby coffee shop, where several men came outside to chase the tall man, but he was gone in a flash. Though the men looked up every alley, he couldn't be found, and they couldn't understand how he could have disappeared so fast. The police were quickly summoned, and apparently they had found the account rather amusing, and were hardly able to take it seriously, despite its hysteria. Over the next few weeks, more townsfolk began to have identical experiences, a deathly tall apparition in black that appeared as though from nowhere and laughed at them maniacally, then vanished by running away from them as fast as lightning. No one was able to see its face properly. It always wore a hood and what appeared to be a long black cape. It wasn't just one or two reports, there were many. Panicked phone calls to the police describing a demon tormenting them with ferocious laughter. And again, the strange buzzing sound accompanying the unidentified figure. The story went not only national, but international, as news stations picked up on it. Was it a beast from hell itself, or just local kids dressing up and spooking the locals? In fact, the police chief went on record saying it was nothing more than a handful of bored teenagers who were finding it to be a great pastime to terrify the folks at night. That sounded the most logical explanation, especially when he said that one of them would get up on another's shoulders to make it look like this person was immensely tall. Then they'd throw a black cape over them, and the disguise was good to go. It sounded like a smart ruse that had fooled many, and yet what this explanation failed to answer was how the figure could disappear in a flash at such immense speed if one of them was standing on the other's shoulders. All of the witness reports said, right? All of the witness reports said that the tall man or beast vanished as fast as a streak of lightning. It seemed to be able to move almost at the speed of light, and it would disappear in microseconds, they all said, only to appear somewhere else moments later. How could two teenagers achieve this? All the while one standing on the other's shoulders. Was it boys or beasts? Or both?
Yeah. That's a good one. I like that.
That's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny how, I mean, I guess it's not a ridiculous thing to do, but how, the first thing is, oh, it's somebody playing a hoax.
Yeah, somebody must be.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, that can happen, but
yeah, but
you
it's
can
like,
usually
well,
catch people doing that, right?
Yeah, how does the person doing the hoax do impossible supernatural things?
Right. Right.
Right. Although
Very
I did hear
gifted.
something interesting recently on shout out to the Arcane Carolinas podcast.
Oh yeah.
That was really good. They said that there was a costume company in Charlotte called I think it was Morris Costumes. It was ran by a guy named Philip Morris. Same name as the cigarette manufacturers, but different guy. And that he ran he made costumes for movie companies and stuff, and that he swears, and he didn't tell this until after Patterson from the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot film passed away, because he wanted to help him keep a secret, but he swears he sold that guy a ghillie suit through the mail for $400, which was big money back then in the 60s. But yeah, I'd like to. I had never heard that. I'd like to dig deeper into that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm. Said he gave him advice on how to make it look more realistic, to put football shoulder pads on underneath the costume to comb the hair.
Yeah, and they're always talking. I'm sorry, the dog. I hear the dog outside. Somebody's cutting grass. He's trying to attack the lawnmowers. But you can't hear that, hopefully. Okay.
No, I can't.
No, I know it being a costume that people were like, well, they didn't have costumes like that, so that's interesting. If someone said they did sell one, sell
it's
like
very
a
interesting. I'm totally undecided. Undecided on that. But yeah, one of the things you hear a lot is just look at the Planet of the Apes movies that were made around the same time, and it's true. The costume in the Patterson Gimlin film looks better than the Planet of the Apes costumes,
right?
And you can, in the Patterson Gimlin film, see musculature and breast. And the thing that gets me, if you were going to hoax a Bigfoot, would you put breast on it? That wouldn't be some guy's first.
You wouldn't even bother, right? You wouldn't even try that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm undecided. I think it's fascinating, the whole story, and who knows,
I'm glad that that's interesting. Then I'll check that out. I did grab that podcast to check out.
Yeah, I'll send you that episode. It was the whole episode was really good. Okay. Here's another one from Preston Dennet's book. I hate to do one more from it, but it's really
there's so many good ones, right?
Yeah. Fort Stock. Oh, this is the one I told you about that piqued my interest so much. Fort Stockton Elementary and Junior High School. It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in May 1972 when Carl Wilson, his brother, and his father were at the intersection of Main Street and Coal Pit Street, making deliveries to the Pick Pack grocery store in Fort Stockton, Texas. Carl, who was a sophomore at Fort Stockton High School, often joined his father, who was a route delivery driver for the Dr. Pepper Company. As soon as they pulled up for the delivery, Carl's father said, "You boys ever see a UFO?" "No, sir," Carl replied. "Well, there's your one right over there." He pointed outside. Carl couldn't believe his eyes. There was an elementary school just a few yards from the corner of Main and Coal Pits, and right up above the school was a silver object about the size of a football field.
Mm.
It hovered about 50 feet above the school and was shaped like a boomerang. From my position, I figured that it was about 10 to 15 feet thick. Carl was shocked and stared intently at the object. His dad exited the truck and said, "I don't want you boys watching that damn UFO. We got work to do."
Sorry.
Yeah. Not
Go ahead.
wanting to disobey his father, Carl exited the truck. "So my brother and I unloaded the cases that he needed," says Carl. "But every once in a while, I would glance over to the school to make sure that the silver boomerang was still there. I even noticed a couple of cars that pulled over to the side of the road and people getting out and looking at it." Carl then went inside the store and started to stock the shelves. To his shock, even though the strange object was in full view of at least 15 to 20 people, nobody seemed to notice it.
Oh, wow.
Carl approached the cashier and asked if he saw that shiny thing hovering over the school. "Yeah," he replied. "What is that thing?" "My dad says it's a UFO," Carl replied. That right?" the cashier said. "Strangest thing I ever saw." To Carl's surprise, the cashier looked away and began to ring up the order of the next customer, as if seeing a UFO was no big deal. "So you can see it?" he repeated. The cashier didn't react. Carl was shocked. "I was confused as why no one was reacting to it. I thought that everyone would drop what they were doing and rush outside to gawk at it. But the cashier just rang people up like it was an everyday event, and everyone else was acting the same way, like nothing was going on." Carl persisted, trying again to obtain witnesses. "So you can see that?" he asked the cashier, pointing out the window. "Yep," he replied. By this time, the deliveries were done, and Carl's father ordered the boys back into the truck. Carl was disappointed, as he wanted to observe the UFO longer. As they drove off, the UFO was still hovering stationary 30 feet above the school. "My disappointment didn't last very long," Carl says. They had driven only a few miles down Main Street when they encountered another identical-looking UFO. This time it hovered directly over the Fort Stockton Junior High School, says Carl. The tallest buildings were downtown, and they weren't any taller than 2 stories, but the junior high school was at least 3 stories high. And there it was. Another one was hovering over the junior high. So you've got 2 of these things at 2 different schools in the same little town. Carl was amazed. Unfortunately, his dad had more deliveries to make, so Carl couldn't keep his eye on the object. It took about 3 hours to make all their deliveries. During the deliveries, Carl would look around for the object, and after hovering for several minutes over the junior high school, he saw that it had moved again, or there was another object. Every time we took off to the next stop, I would look out of the passenger side window for the silver boomerangs, and I saw them throughout the rest of the day. But it was how the people reacted that really blew me away. People were going about their business like nothing was going on. Even though occasionally a car would pull over and people would get out to point in the same direction I was looking, I even got the impression it was following us.
Oh.
He saw it numerous times, hovering over the local trailer park, over the hospital, and at one point over the Fort Stockton High School. So that's 3 schools.
All the schools.
Yeah. Says Carl, the objects I saw were hovering over all of the schools in town, which brings up another question. I can't understand why a craft would be hovering over school if no one was in them. Their last stop was at a gas plant several miles out of town. When Carl saw the object there again, he was amazed. My dad looked terrified, and he warned us once more to pay attention to our work and not be staring at the UFO. So he parked the truck facing away from the boomerang. They unloaded the truck and waited for their dad to settle the bill inside. Carl's brother began reading a magazine. Carl was amazed. Even his own brother was acting strangely. "Do you see the UFO?" he asked. "Yeah, why?" his brother replied. "Well, don't you even care? Daddy says it's a UFO, but everybody's acting like it isn't even there." "Yeah, and Daddy told us not to be watching it, so I ain't watching it. If you want to watch it, that's your problem, but I ain't getting in trouble. I'm going to read this magazine." Weird. At this point, something even stranger happened. "I looked out of the rearview mirror and watched it as I thought about it," said Carl. "I wondered why my dad was so, and remembered thinking that they were taking everyone, including my dad. He was gone for 2 solid hours. When he came out of the office, he still looked terrified, and he never said a word. As we drove off, I noticed that the boomerang was gone.
Interesting.
On the way, that is interesting. On the way back through Fort Stockton, Carl searched for the object, but never saw it again. Nor was he ever able to locate any other information about it. In search of answers, he reported his sightings and was interviewed by researcher Brian Vike. To this day, he still wonders about what he saw that day in Fort Stockton, Texas, and why it hovered over all 3 schools. While Carl didn't experience an abduction, he hints at the possibility that his father did. Also, years later, Carl discovered that he was having apparent visitations by ETs. Maybe related is a sighting which took place 4 months earlier on January 19th, 1972 over Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. The case also involves a boomerang-shaped UFO hovering very low over a high school. At around 9:30 p.m. on that evening, 12 witnesses in Phoenixville, including 3 police officers, observed a strange boomerang-shaped object hovering over the Phoenixville High School. One officer said the object was about the size of a DC-3 and had 3 red lights and numerous white lights around its perimeter. So, yeah, that's really interesting to me, how some people just
don't. Yeah, that's, yeah.
How they don't react, or it's no big deal.
Yeah, I've actually experienced, in life, and like if you know 2 people and they say that, like, one would be like, "Hey, remember when we saw this thing?" and the other one would be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And you're like,
Right.
I have like friends that have done that. Like, they'll try to tell their story and the other person's like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Right. Or
the person I'm thinking about said that, but then they also said, "I don't want to talk about that." So it's like, wait, you don't remember, you don't know what we're talking about, or you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it was there was a guy on Bigfoot Odyssey recently, fascinating. I can't remember his name, but it was such a good. He had been hunting in Florida with a guy, and they both had visitations by a Bigfoot family, and the other guy completely shut down and was like, "Don't ever bring this up to me again. Yep. We're not going to talk about it."
Yep, I listened to that one too. I remember, and he's like, forever, like the guy like shut it down, like, like, talk about this. I don't even.
Yeah, it's too much. And then you've got me and you who are like, yay!
Wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Which school?
I know. Let's go.
This now we're which book? Sorry. God, I wrote it down and I just like lost it. Oh, Ghosts of America by Nina Lautner. And there's like volumes. It's like a lot.
Okay.
This one is called The Music Conservatory, St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana. When I was a student, I loved to spend time in the music conservatory. It is an ancient building, probably over 100, with marble staircases, a splendid auditorium, and outstanding architecture. It looks like a scene straight out of Phantom of the Opera. However, during my 4 years there were some things that were strange. Music in the basement. If you've been to the woods, you probably know that there are underground tunnels that are forbidden. However, being the rebels we were, a couple of friends and I decided to sneak into them. There is an entrance near the music conservatory, and it was fairly easy to get into at the time. There were 4 of us, and we landed in the dark tunnel with nothing but small lights to show us the way. It was not anything too impressive, just cobwebbed concrete tunnels and whatnot. We had been drinking, so the whole thing was not exactly what I would call scary. And then we heard music. At first, we did not think anything of it. We were close to the conservatory, so it could be anyone. Why anyone would go to the conservatory to play music past 12 a.m. is beyond me. We tried extra hard to be quiet so we would not get caught. We decided to follow the sound. We kept getting closer and closer, and then it stopped. We stiffened up because we thought maybe we had been too loud. We stood there for the longest time and finally decided to go back up to the ground level. When we were above ground again, we heard the music again. So we decided to be curious and go into the music conservatory. It was unlocked. As we were walking through there, it was pitch black. We walked quietly, following the sound of a piano. When we finally thought we'd nailed the room with the piano, we opened the door. It was pitch black, and the music stopped abruptly. I flicked on a light, and there sat an empty piano. I had never been so chilled in my life. I know that was where the music was coming from. It felt like someone was in the room with us, but we looked everywhere to find no one. It was quite a sobering fear, having been a little buzzed. We left and never went back to the conservatory past dark again. And that was submitted by Kelsey, St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana.
Oh,
So a
wow.
ghost story for you.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
And I always love, like, there's places here too where there's tunnels, places that
Yeah.
have tunnels,
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, I have another one. This is God, I hate to do this, but the book's so good. Here's one more. That's it from Preston Dennet. But this is a place I know a lot about. I used to work for a cleaning company years ago for a long time. And we were at this building at least once a week for 8 years. I spent at this place. And it was so creepy. We would hear things, and it was so creepy that I always expected to run into a ghost or something. But the most we ever got was you got me and the other supervisor were like big giant guys, 250 pounds, and we were scared to death every
Right.
time.
And you're not, just to clarify, you're not like easily creeped out. No.
No, we're both beasts. And but we were like little kids in this place.
Right.
We
So if you're
heard,
like, this place is creepy, then it must
yeah,
be really
we
creepy.
would have to, if we were filling in for a cleaner, or we also had to do like carpet cleaning and big jobs like that, we would do it in record time to get out of there. And we would always
Excellent
ask,
teamwork.
yeah, we'd ask every which for some reason we could never keep a cleaner there. We went through multiple, they wouldn't last long. And so we started asking them, hey, you seen anything? And all of them said, man, yeah, I hear things. Something's in here, but I haven't seen anything. So there's, by the way, this place is the North Carolina School for the Deaf in Morganton, which is close by. And it has a history. Some of the reports are seeing a lady in white. Some said they've seen a little girl, the ghost of a little girl in there, and some say they've seen an older man actually sweeping up in the place. So yeah, it's the building's at least 100 years old, and but this is actually from the Preston Dennet book. This is a UFO sighting at that school.
Right.
And by the way, the land this place is on is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's
Wow.
the foothills of the mountains, North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
mountains, and it's just where everything starts to get real hilly and the mountains start, and you can see it. It's almost like you can see for miles. It's amazing. It makes me think of that scene from The Sound of Music, kind of.
You're spinning around out there.
Yeah.
As long as you're not in the building, you're all right.
Yeah. And the building is a part of a massive part of buildings where a famous sanitarium is. Broughton is on the other side on the same part of government land, and there's a ton of ghost stories about Broughton. But
interesting.
So okay, North Carolina School for the Deaf. At 7:30 p.m. on a mid-March evening in 1979, 2 students and a dorm teacher exited the dorms at the North Carolina School for the Deaf in Morganton to put some trash in the dumpster. Looking up, they saw some strange lights approaching from the north at a low altitude. They were so low that they were dipping down into the valley where the school was located. The lights approached closer. They were blue in color and brilliant to the point of being blinding. The teacher ran back inside to get more witnesses. When he returned outside, the object was so close to the back of the dorm that he felt it might slam into the building. At the last moment, the object rose upward and avoided the building. The witnesses could see the object had 3 bright lights on the front side. As it passed overhead, they noticed 3 additional lights on the rear. Meanwhile, the dorm director was up on the 3rd floor of the building when he heard a real strange noise. He described it as a loud woo 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 sound, high-pitched, with a wavering vibration. Says the director, "At first I didn't pay much attention, but then I heard all this screaming and hollering going on. Several of the deaf children physically felt the strange vibration of the object as it passed overhead. About 10 to 15 students and adults witnessed the craft move over the building, then disappear over the treetops. 2 hours later at 9:30 p.m., 5 additional witnesses spotted more mysterious lights over the valley between Broughton Hospital and the adjacent North Carolina School for the Deaf. They pulsed in brilliance, moved vertically and horizontally at high speed, then zipped off to the south, disappearing over the horizon. Year after year, UFOs continue a campaign of appearing over schools and putting on a demonstration. Another thing that's really bizarre about this, where this is at is near the Brown Mountain Lights, like right down the street.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot going on over there.
Right?
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
It's a wonderful town. Morganton, North Carolina is just a really cool place, and the surrounding areas, you know. I love it. I love it up there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So now we
Okay.
get to talk about movies that we watched. Right?
Yeah. What'd you watch?
Well, I think the first thing that came to mind was Prom Night and
Yeah.
Carrie, but I didn't watch
Ooh, I
this.
didn't even think about Carrie.
I didn't watch this though.
It's funny. I was listening to. Oh yeah, I listened to Joe Rogan for like 2 minutes, and he was talking about how much Carrie freaked him out as a kid, and I was like, damn, I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a big school one, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Prom Night.
that'd probably be the first on most people's list, you
Right.
know.
And Prom Night, but like we said, it's like a slasher film.
Yeah, totally
Part one.
paranormal.
Part one is anyway, right?
Yeah. But I do remember watching that a few times as a young kid. I guess I started really getting into horror movies when I was around 7 or 8, and I would rent that, and it would scare me so much.
Right.
It was so scary. I don't know, like the
Back during
shot on
the
film of the 70s, the ambience of it, it just really
yeah.
Yeah.
And the Friday night movie rental kind of time period. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So I ended up watching like the 70s TV movies, pretty much.
Awesome.
I started with Satan's School for Girls, which is 1973, the year I was born.
Yeah.
And it was on ABC. And that one, it's okay. I mean, it's all right.
Yeah, I like the I really like how it starts out with her being chased and
like there's
yeah.
like chased by we don't know what.
Right. Yeah, that whole thing. And
it's basically a girl commits suicide at her sister's house, and her sister thinks it has something to do with the school she was attending. So
right.
then the sister like signs whatever and goes to the school.
And everybody, I guess, from the very beginning, everybody's acting so shady that she kind of knows something shady's going on.
Something's up. Something's weird about the
kind
school.
Of lets the viewer know pretty quick there is something.
But Kate Jackson's in it, and she's really cute in it.
Yeah.
From Charlie's Angels. Probably the least talked about angel, but
yeah, she's great.
But she's really cute, and she did a really good job in that movie. Like she's like, the girl that befriends her, and
Right. You can tell right away it's an Aaron Spelling production.
Yes.
Beautiful women. But I'd argue that the women in Satan's School for Girls are the prettiest because of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like gory or anything. Nothing like that. Is the mystery, I guess. And then what was it? It was like at one point witches were hung in that basement or something, and right?
I can't remember. I didn't make it through it. I started watching it, and
there are the other girl commits suicide, right?
Yeah. What were they? Were they driving them to suicide, or what? What was?
No, I think what it was Satan, who ends up being one of the teachers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course.
Was trying to gather his witches again.
Yeah.
And
that's cool. That kind of goes along with one of my movies.
Okay, he's trying to gather like the right amount or whatever again, which was a weird number. I think it was like 8 or something.
Yeah.
And the ones that committed suicide were, I think, ones that kind of resisted it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they like ended up committing suicide.
Wow.
Oddly. Yeah. But
Those are
and then
so
at the
good.
end,
Those
at
made for
the
TV movies are just
yeah.
awesome.
And at the end, Satan walks into the fire and he has like this robe with like a high collar, which is kind of hilarious. He's got the high collar and he
Yeah.
walks into the fire, and I guess that's the end, but outside the building smoking a cigarette.
Well,
And he,
I love in different horror movies their idea of the devil. I'm like a connoisseur of the different personifications of the devil. It's the best one so far is a great 1978 horror movie called The Evil, also known as House of Evil. And you don't see the devil till the end of it, but it's like the guy there's like a hidden room in the house, and
always, sir.
yeah, the guy goes in there and it's pure white. And the devil is like this old fat white guy who with white hair and a white suit, and it's the best devil yet.
It's
I
like,
love
wow,
it.
yeah.
It's the best guy, and he's such a prick. It's so fitting. So that's my favorite devil so far from The Evil. And of
then
course, you can't beat Al Pacino, Devil's Advocate.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
And you can chime in, or do you want me to keep going with what I watched? However you want to do it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
One of the ones I picked was called The Night Visitor from 1989. It's just one of those cheesy 80s horror movies that I love, and it's kind of forgotten. But it wasn't a small studio. It was like a big studio, MGM or something movie. But yeah, so this kid, Derek Rydell, the actor in the movies, Billy Colton, but he is just like the boy who cried wolf. He's like this cool teenager, whatever, has a guy friend and a girlfriend that he always hangs out with, and he's known for being a bullshitter.
Right.
And so every time, he's always telling lies to his like teachers and stuff like this, this type of guy. But he gets a new neighbor, and the neighbor is Shannon Tweed, who when I was a kid, I was totally in love with Shannon Tweed. I watched every Shannon Tweed movie, and this is the only one she doesn't take her top off.
Right.
But she moves in next door, and of course he's smitten with her, and he figures out pretty quick she's like a call girl, like a high priced call girl. And so he starts peeking on her and watching her from his window. And when she has her clients over, and so anyway, he has like a harsh relationship with one of his high school teachers, who's a real prick, and his history teacher, I think. And anyway, this one night when he's peeking on her, he gets ballsy. He's like, okay, I'm gonna like climb up on her roof and get a better look. And he's got like a camera and shit.
Right.
So he goes up, and there's this whole scene where she set candles and it's kind of occultish, you know, and the guy in there reaches up a knife and kills her, and he's like, oh shit.
Right.
Well, the murderer comes out to try and get Billy, and he pulls the hood off, and it's his history teacher.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So he the total 80s goofball fest. It's great. And so immediately he goes back home, freaks out, tells his mom, and they call the cops, and the cop comes over. The cop is Richard Roundtree, who's a great actor. And you can tell everybody in this movie was like not thrilled to be there, but but I like it. But yeah, the kid, right away, they don't believe the kid. They think he's full of shit. And they go and check the history teacher's alibi, and the history teacher's home with his mentally disabled brother, who's a great actor. I'll remember his name in a minute. He's been in a lot of stuff. But yeah, so pretty much everybody thinks this kid's full of shit, but the guy is
not.
Yeah, the history teacher is a Satanist. Him and his
of course he is.
Yeah, him and his and it's this movie is so goofy that it's such a train wreck. You can't stop watching it because it's like this history teacher is the biggest dork in the world. He's like nothing about him screams Satanist or dark or anything. He's just a goofy, fat, middle-aged guy. And his brother's even worse. And they're these, you know, true devil worshipping murderers who murder hookers. And yeah, so anyway, he keeps the whole devil worshipping, murdering hooker thing going. And Billy continues to fight to try and catch him and get people to believe him. That's the movie. And I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kind of a forgotten movie.
Right.
Yeah, I dig it though. Elliot Gould's in it. Elliot Gould plays his friend of his father, who his father's dead, but is a friend of his father who's a reporter, and he finally gets him to help him catch the guys and put it into the stuff.
Satanic murder spree.
Yeah, and another thing, this was the height of Satanic Panic, 1989. Right. So like there were tons of these movies. There were so many.
Like, watch out, guys, even your nerdy history teacher.
Yeah. That was the theme of everything, was like, oh, there are literally Satanists in every town, and they're the people you trust. That was the message, you know.
Right.
And the fucking media, of course, lapped it up. They're like, yeah, we can make movies on this shit and people will watch it, you know. But yeah, that's how it total Satanic Panic film, you know, really bad pentagrams.
Right.
The sets are like thrown together in 5 minutes. They're not that elaborate, you know. It's like back in the 70s when you had the satanic movies. They spent a lot of fucking time on the
it's beautiful, right? It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It made you want to be a Satanist. And, but then the 80s, they were like, it was being done so often, they throw that shit together in like 5 minutes, you know. It was a little less impressive. Even the lighting isn't good, but I like it.
It's a good one for add it to the list, right? It's a good one. Right?
It to me
enjoyable.
I recommend it. I love it.
All right. And then I watched The Possessed from 1977. All
Cool.
right.
Yeah.
And it was on NBC back
Oh,
then.
wow.
And it starts out with an alcoholic priest, of course.
Yeah,
Right?
always. Yeah.
James Ferrantino. If you don't know him, if you see his face, you'll be like, "Oh yeah, him."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
think,
Like,
let me look him up. But wait, go ahead. I'm gonna look.
yeah. And so he dies in a car accident, and then you hear this, God's talking to him, like he had failed and whatever, and he's going to get a chance to go back and fight evil to kind of, I guess, win his salvation. I guess.
Totally.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so that's how it starts, but then it goes to this girls' school,
Oh yeah, I love
and
that guy.
it's like graduation time, and everybody's all excited and whatever. And then these strange fires start happening. Like
Okay.
one happens in the teacher's office. One happens when the girls are trying to sneak back from being out late with guys or whatever, and like the curtains catch on fire
Yeah.
and like and the teacher thinks something's odd about it. And the third one, they're practicing for graduation. And the girl who's standing up talking at the podium, her robe catches on fire, and she actually
Right.
ends up like burnt up. And that's when they try to get help. The teacher does, and because she thinks something's odd about it. And suddenly this James Ferrantino shows up to help, right? Like this magic priest shows up, right? And he starts investigating and stuff. And Harrison Ford is in it. He's the
Oh wow.
biology teacher, right? And so he was sleeping with the one student
Yeah, I
who
think I
snuck back to
remember
her.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he kind of burns up after we find out the girl or whatever.
Yeah.
And because at first you're thinking, oh, is he the
Yeah.
evil one or whatever? But he gets burnt
Yeah.
up.
Oh
And
wow.
then you find out that the headmistress also was sleeping with him, right?
Oh wow.
It's a weird scene where like James Ferrantino is investigating, and he like is walking through the school, and he finds her in dead Harrison Ford's office. And she's like, when he walks in, she's like, I don't even know how to explain it. She's like up against the wall on the desk, and her like tights are out. I'm like, what is she fucking doing? Like, is she like remembering something? Like, maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe they had sex there or something. I don't know. I was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is this, right? And then she's like talking weird and just kind of out of it and weird, and he's paying attention, and he's kind of putting two and two together and everything. And then
Yeah.
she gets really weird, and she's like wandering around, and she smacks a girl that slept with Harrison Ford and stuff. So it turns out the headmistress is possessed. Okay. So I guess it's her fault, all the
Yeah.
fires and stuff. And then so it gets more dramatic after that. But there's like a great scene when he's like fighting her, and it's like vomit spewing at his face. So it's pretty, I mean, for a TV movie, it's interesting. And
Now,
there's
um would you put this into the subgenre of Exorcist ripoff movies? Would it
uh,
fit that good in there?
uh
Or did it
yeah,
have
I
enough?
guess yeah, I guess see where maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta watch
The
it.
super
I
priest and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the too many people sleeping with the biology teacher
Yeah.
led to possession somehow.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
But yeah, they're spewing vomit and like I guess locusts, bugs. I didn't like pay that much attention
Yeah.
to what
And
kind of bug.
oh wow. Yeah. Well, and you have the priest in one of the main roles, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it was definitely interesting.
Cool. Yeah, this one was the year I was born.
What? The 77?
Yeah, the Possessed.
Ah, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks good. I'm gonna have to watch it again.
Yeah,
I
that
think
one's
I've
interesting.
seen it, but it's been a long time.
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
And
Yeah, I love these.
And then we both watch Mark of the Witch? Or no? Did you not?
Yeah, I've seen it a million times, so I
Mark
could
of the
definitely
Witch,
talk about it.
1970.
Yeah,
That
I love it.
one, for like a low budget, like not big actors,
Yeah,
whatever. That
almost.
one was interesting, right? That
I
one
love
was.
it. I love it. I love the opening scene where the witch is being burned at the stake and announcing her future revenge on all these people.
Right, and then it gets like kind of cheesy with just the way the people are acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the time period, like the shit the guys are saying. I can't even remember. Like I know when I was watching, I was like, "Oh my god, he just said this." Like,
Yeah. It's goofy as hell. I love it. I really like the 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 main character who gets possessed by the witch. I forget her name in the movie. Um, I don't know. I just
she did. Yeah, she was good. Oh, and to
she was
tell
good. Yeah,
everybody, it's like college kids. One of
yeah,
the students finds a book at the book fair or whatever that they're getting ready for, and it's supposedly this like real diary, like witch spell kind of thing, right?
right,
And they do like a ritual out of it,
absolutely, yeah. It's the
and it works.
yeah, almost like a class project.
Yeah, and it works.
and it works, and well, nobody really knows that it's worked except it possesses one of the students, and the
Right.
ghost of this several hundred-year-old witch
Right.
goes into this girl, and she proceeds to wreak havoc on everybody.
And
Yeah,
there's like that real groovy scene, like where she goes out into the woods and she's like in her little mini dress, and it's like she's saying all this stuff, like calling. Oh, she's gods and stuff, but she's kind of dancing around in her mini
yeah,
dress. You know that
and
scene? It's like,
yeah,
it's like shot well. It's like interesting, you know. Like,
yeah. So I love the movie. I love it. I love everything about it. I like the soundtrack even, and
right.
it's so yeah, I'm looking up the actress we're talking about was Anitra Walsh. Looks like this was her only movie, and
Right. It wasn't like, yeah, it was
yeah,
people they found, I guess, in the area. It was filmed in Dallas, right?
yeah, and she died at 32. I
Oh
hate to
shit.
see that. Yeah, 1980 she died. Wow. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
but
that one's worth a watch.
that's definitely love it. Um, yes, and I watched another one that I've loved since I was a kid called Popcorn.
Popcorn.
Yeah, 1990, 1980. No, 1990 probably. And yeah, it's always been one of my favorites. And years ago, I went to a horror movie festival and got to see this on the big screen
Oh shit.
with the main actress in attendance.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Jill Sholin, she's been in a lot of stuff. If you see her, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember her from this. She was in The Stepfather. Remember that movie?
Mm-hmm.
She was the girl in that, but she's the main character in this, and yeah, it's awesome. It's the it's a film school.
Mm-hmm.
These, like college age film school, and they need to raise funds so they can have a new editing room and have money for their own projects. So they decide, okay, we're going to do like the old horror festival.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so cool. I saw this movie on the big screen at a horror movie festival.
Right.
So they do the old timey horror movie festival where they play multiple old horror movies and have all the gimmicks. Like,
mm-hmm.
Like say they're playing a horror movie called The Shocker, and in the scene where somebody gets shocked, they'll have buzzers in the seats and they'll hit the button and stuff like that. They'll have like bats flying through the theater.
Oh, that sounds like it probably gets pretty
It's awesome. It's fucking the best thing ever. That to me is like, oh my God, it's the best. So they do this, really cool horror movie festival. And let me back up. So when they're cleaning out the theater, because it's an old theater they rent out, mm-hmm. and they have to clean it up to get it ready for the thing, they find a stash of homemade film, like 16 millimeter films, mm-hmm. that somebody made, and they watch it, and it's these like creepy old psychedelic mm-hmm. Mind fuck movies. And the girl Jill Sholin realizes they're all laughing at it, how goofy it is and all that, and the girl realizes she's been having dreams of like this same guy in the dream. And so afterwards the film school teacher tells the class, he's like, look, I know who this guy is. He fucking killed his family and a couple other people here locally. He was like head of a film cult, and this is his stuff. Because they were thinking about, well, this is pretty weird, so we'll play it at the festival. And he's like, no, we can't do it. It's too weird. So anyway, they put on the festival. It's amazing. Everybody's dressed up, and it's like a packed house, and they're playing these old B horror movies, and murder start happening in the theater. So that's the movie. I don't want to give anything.
Oh, that sounds good.
My highest recommendation is for this movie. And there's kind of a bummer about it. There's one of the really good reissue companies now, I think it's Synapse Films. They own the rights, mm-hmm. but the last time they released it, they only did a limited run of like a couple thousand, and it was like $40 or maybe $45. So it's really hard to get. Like, I think it's it's really hard to own. It'd be pretty easy to stream. I think there might even be a low quality on YouTube, but definitely watch it. Popcorn, it's one of the best. I have the soundtrack. I'd love to have an original poster, because the poster of this is just fantastic. And
that one sounds good.
Yeah, I might have had an original poster when I was a kid that I got from the video store. I can't. Seems like I did, but it's long gone now.
Right, because they used to get rid of stuff, right?
Yeah. I used to have tons of
like the. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I had. Oh God, I had so many good ones. I had Demons 2. I had The Curse.
And this is like even before Blockbuster. Like there were the mom and pop video stores that we all went to.
Yeah, the one I went to at this time, I was probably about between 10 and 13. And this wasn't my favorite video store, but they would let me have the posters.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
Yeah.
honestly, you built a relationship. Like as soon
Oh
as that
yeah.
shit came out, like all families went there on Friday night and like loaded
Yeah.
up on.
And the thing was, like, everybody's a greedy fuck now. Back then, not everybody collected
Right.
things thinking they were going to be worth money.
Right. So
You
sure,
know,
you can have this poster. I'm
yeah,
done
because
displaying.
most
I have other shit to display now.
exactly, yeah, like we're just gonna throw this stuff away, but let's give the kid something to put on his wall, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was cool. But
Awesome.
my favorite videos, I'm just gonna go on a rant if you don't
That's
mind.
fine. Yep.
My
Go.
favorite video store was called Video Adventures. It was in High
Mm-hmm.
Point, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
and I went at least once a week, usually twice a week. And these were my teenage years, and they had the 5 for 5, so you could rent 5
Mm-hmm.
movies for 5 nights, $5, and they had an incredible back room. Well, they had 2 back rooms, the horror movie and the adult section connected to it, but their horror movie room was
Was it?
giant.
Oh, that was in the back too. Okay.
Yeah, and it was painted black, and they had like a spooky soundtrack playing back there all the time, like ghost noises
Nice.
and
All right.
it was, yeah, it was painted black with black lights. They had every horror movie you could think of. It was amazing. And
Right.
the guy, we were friends with the guy whose dad ran it, and he was a total horror movie geek too, so he was in heaven. But
Right.
yeah, it's funny. I I was a VHS collector until DVDs came out,
Mm-hmm.
and immediately got rid of my DVD. Or immediately got rid of my VHS because I don't like the format. I think it sucks. I like
Mm-hmm.
disc a lot better. But um, yeah, I've known people over the years that still collect VHS, and some of the titles that go for big money now, every one of those this store had, every one of them.
Right.
These titles that go for hundreds of dollars. It's like,
And
oh, I remember that day.
there were the ones that had like the cases that were like super big, like the
Yeah,
box.
like
And like,
the
yeah.
big box, and a lot of the kind of like were records. A lot of the ones that were smaller runs, but there was
Mm-hmm.
something about it that people love. You know, those type of movies. But yeah, I loved it,
Right.
man. It was going to the video store was the greatest thing in the world to me when I was a kid.
Right. I think,
Loved
yeah,
it.
if you grew up during that time, it was
Yeah.
a big
Yeah, and
part
it
of
was
it.
for me it was always horror movies. There I might rent like one movie that wasn't horror, but the rest were horror.
Yeah, we did too. So I don't know
Yeah.
if that was a thing at the time. Do you think it
Yeah,
was?
I think so. It's the
I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure we rented other stuff. I know we rented other stuff because the adults would, what was it, like Urban Cowboy or
yeah.
Godfather? Like they would watch other stuff.
Yeah.
There was always
Yeah.
horror movies on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was and even as an adult I'm this way, but I guess less so, but yeah, there were movies that I watched over and over and over and over.
Right. Yeah.
And eventually I got to where pretty young I realized how into movies I was. So I got an extra VCR and would start to record stuff I'd rent if it was really good. So I
Right.
ended up with like hundreds of tapes. And um, yeah, like I said, when the DVD came out, I got rid
You
of
were
all
like,
of them.
oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
better. Right.
Yeah, because the format sucks. I mean, to me, VHS, the hiss, there's bad audio, the picture's not
Mm-hmm.
good. It just, and once I
And
started, I
tape
think the
in
first,
general.
yeah, tape in
Yeah.
general, but the first, yeah, I feel the same way about cassettes. I know people that
Right.
collect them now, and I'm like, I totally, I think it's cool, but it's not my thing. I do
It's
not
kind
like
of
tape.
flimsy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and not that there were, um, pressings of tapes that were like on good quality tape, and those things will last forever. So I'm
Right.
not saying in general. I'm just saying in general, when
Disc.
when they were mass producing this shit on cheap tape, it's like, yeah, that thing's not that good.
Bring up for people who like podcasts, there's a drama, like audio drama podcast called Video Palace, and it's horror. But the storyline is about like a video store.
Really?
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds great. Yeah.
And I think we both watched Midnight Offerings from 1987. You didn't make it through. It was cheesy, right?
I really tried.
It was Melissa Sue Anderson from Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie.
So I think she was having a great time because, like, she played this innocent, character for years. Yeah. So she got to be like the witch or something. So she was like all into it. She was like,
yeah.
But it was so high school cheesy. It was like, or like she's got her boyfriend and like, the other dude on the team like breaks a leg or something. So now her boyfriend's the quarterback. Like she's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was.
And then when he's like, doesn't want to be a dater anymore, it's like everybody else he talks to like is in danger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're mine,
It was kind of, it's funny how it's just a stupid made for TV horror movie, but it was kind of uncomfortable to watch that.
Yeah, and it was like every, like, okay, they got attacked by crows.
Nobody's gonna talk to you.
Yes. They got attacked by crows. Yeah. A black cat.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And a goat attack. There's a goat attack. And then, of course, the other girl that comes to town is also, but she doesn't know. She finds out during this that she's a hereditary witch. So she has powers. Right. And, it's just hilarious. Oh my God. But anyway, at the end, since you didn't make it, there's a battle at the high school. Like because
that's what I figured was coming. The battle of the witches, the teenage witch battle.
Yeah, she's devoted to Hecate, and then the old lady
really?
The old lady that's helping is like, oh, they are very rare. Like, there's only one or two. I'm like, really? Like, right?
Oh my God.
So I'm like, okay, shit, right? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, and it's gonna be the full moon tonight, and she'll be extra powerful and stuff. Just stay away. I don't know what to tell you to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then,
maybe I should have stuck with it.
So they're gonna stay away, right? They're gonna hide out somehow. So all she does is call her on the phone, right? And she's like, "Don't tell him it's me, right? The guy. This was all about this guy, right?
Right.
Fucking Dave and the fucking van.
The football player, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why it's the perfect high school movie. It's all right. And she's like, meet me at the like science lab. I don't know, the gym. I don't know. Meet me at the school, right? Don't tell anybody.
Right.
Or she'll kill him, right?
Yeah.
So the girl goes and meets her. They like, it gets like weird, like the goat attack and all kinds of weird shit. And then the bad witch I don't know, she makes a wood pile up around the other girl and she's gonna set her on fire.
Oh shit.
Like, and burn her.
Yeah.
And the bad witch's mom shows up because guess what? Mama was also a witch, but she just decided to have a normal life.
Right.
So Mama shows up to fight her daughter who's out of control, and tells the other girl to help me, like join your powers with me and help me fight her. And she does, and then the mother says this is all my fault and runs towards the bad daughter, and they go into the fire.
Oh, wow. What an ending.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it
God,
was really cheesy and really like, yeah, it was.
yeah. I got to give you props for
For staying
sticking
to the
with
end.
it. Yeah, because it sounds great now. It just
Well, I did it in two. Like I watched half and then I watched half another night.
that's probably what I should have done.
Because yeah, it was like, you're mine, Dave. You know, it was
Yeah.
it's like, damn, calm down.
I know.
You can have any of them, right? If
I
like you
know.
have all these powers, right? Why are you stuck on Dave here?
I know. That's great.
So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Now, do you have more, or do you just want to talk about our local stuff?
Um.
You have more?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple
Okay.
school movies that I absolutely love growing up, but they're not paranormal, but they're just movies that have stuck with me my whole life.
Worth a mention.
Totally. Over the Edge, 1978.
Yeah, I know you love that one, right?
Oh God, yeah, juvenile delinquent film. Matt Dillon's first movie. These kids, they they live in a kind of a new planned community called New Granada, and all the parents are upper middle class, but the kids are fucking out of control. Like they're dropping ass. They have all the good drugs. They're always committing crimes, and they're the coolest kids in the world. Like I saw this at 10 years old. I was ruined for life. I was ruined for life. It was my
You're like, I'm that
movie.
kid.
Yeah, it was my favorite movie. Immediately, I'm like, I'm that kid. And there's yeah, so yeah, these kids are fucking nuts. And there's a battle with the cops, and the cops end up killing Matt Dillon, which pisses off the kids really bad. So there's a PTA meeting with the cops and the parent students. The kids lock all the parents and the cops in the school and proceed to blow up their cars, fucking, you know, destroy the town. It's so awesome. It's the best movie ever. I love it. And I heard later that it was Kurt Cobain's favorite movie too. But yeah, it's definitely in my top 5. It's I've probably seen it over 100 times. It's just great. You have to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the best. And another one in the same thing, a movie I watched dozens of times growing up, still love it, was Summer School with Mark Hamill. Yeah. Do you like that one?
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, the guy is Mark Hamill's like the slacker gym teacher, and he gets railroaded into teaching English for summer school. And yeah, it's great. There's another thing, I guess it was really I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it was really exciting to me as a kid because there were these 2 guys in the movie, Chainsaw and Dave, who are horror movie fanatics, and they're in that summer school class. So they're one of their wishes is to play the 16 millimeter of Texas Chainsaw Massacre in class. It's so great. Yeah, it's just one of those, another cheesy, awesome 80s movie. So good.
No Pretty in Pink.
No, and I kind of liked all those movies when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. That's why I brought it up.
At Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, I liked all that stuff, but I'm not into those now. Yeah,
Right.
I don't watch any of
They
that
didn't.
stuff again now.
Didn't have a long shelf life. Like they're not still.
Well, I think they did for a lot of people. There's still a lot of people our age who think those were the best things ever.
Right.
It's funny to me, like, because one of those movies that I really, really liked as a kid, and they're great movies. I'm not saying anything about it, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off,
Mm-hmm.
that's almost become legendary, and these young people watch it now, and it's funny to me is because that movie to me is so dated.
Right.
Like I
Right.
don't see how. I think it's cool that they like it, but yeah, to me that movie's way dated. But yeah, they're great movies. I just that whole group of movies just didn't.
Stick.
I go back and watch the horror movies from the 80s mostly.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those still fascinate me. But the what was it? Was that Cameron Crowe? All those Cameron Crowe movies? Is that what it was? Is that the guy?
Maybe.
Yeah, whoever the guy is that made all those movies. Yeah, he did well, but I don't go back and watch those anymore. Yeah, but
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I did.
I don't either.
I did
And
love
they're
all
kind of
that stuff.
depressing because I never related like to the girls and like the female
Yeah,
leads. Like I'd be like, ew.
yeah.
Like,
I
why
guess.
are you like him? Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like it's like so depressing.
I guess Pretty in Pink was pretty cool because you had the weird girl who shopped at thrift stores, worked at a record shop with punk.
Right. Hung out with older chicks.
Yeah, that was cool to especially to see that in a mainstream movie. And yeah, and fucking James Spader ruled.
I know, right?
The James Spader. I like James Spader and everything, but James Spader as the asshole there's none
perfect.
better. There's none
like,
better. He's
got that.
Perfect prick. I love it. And yeah, him and Pretty in Pink and Less Than Zero are the best bad guys ever. He's the best bad guy.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I highly recommend lesser known James Spader movie called Jack's Back.
Jack's Back.
Yeah, it's 1988, and it's the 100-year anniversary of the Jack the Ripper murders.
Oh shit!
In and there's a copycat killer in Los Angeles. And James Spader plays him and his twin brother. Oh, it's fucking great. I love James Spader.
Oh wow, I'll look that up.
Yeah, and yeah, now there is kind of a supernatural theme in that one. Yeah, there's a subtle supernatural theme running through that Jack's Back. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great one.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you want to talk about the mall?
Yeah, the mall is a big deal now. Yeah. The mall was popular for maybe a decade, maybe two. Yeah, and then it died.
And then it was gone. It was the biggest thing ever.
It was like heaven for it was like, I was like freaking, I don't know, like maybe 13, maybe 12. I don't know. I had friends that were a little older. Like I had a friend that was like 16. Maybe I was 13 then. I don't think she was like super older than that, maybe. And I was like cruising the mall. My mom would let me go, right?
Yeah.
So I'd have to tell guys, I'm sorry, I'm 12. I'm 12. But yeah, that was like the big thing to do. Right?
Yeah, that was I it's so funny. I can remember the very first time I went to the mall with just friends, no parents around, and it was like, oh my God, this is so
Wow.
cool. Yeah, I think I was like 11,
And the
and
arcades and the
yeah,
food.
it was
Yeah.
massive arcades, the fucking record store.
Yes, that
If
was
I had
like a big
known,
deal.
oh my God, the record stores were so good back then. And um oh man, I could my brain just
Right.
almost goes into overload remembering the record stores. But yeah, we had there was one period in time I was preteen, I guess 12 to 14, around there, and me and my mom lived in an apartment across the street from the mall.
Oh shit.
So I literally
You
went,
live there.
yeah, almost every day after school I'd come home and walk across the street, and there was a record store slash bookstore that had all the magazines, and I lived there. I got tons of magazines from there and records, and
Yeah, magazines that was a big deal
that
too.
was the thing for me, especially being a curious kid, pre-internet. I always wanted the stuff I was into, I always kept up on. So I got um horror movie magazines, I got music magazines.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I kept up on all that stuff through magazines. If it was, other than, there wasn't much else.
Right, right,
It was, you were limited to the little bit that you saw on TV and what you could get in
right,
magazines. Yeah, it was it's funny to think about that stuff now. It's a different world. It really
right,
is. Yeah. It
right. Explaining that to kids, they're probably like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
oh
Or why
yeah.
would you even like? Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you didn't. It's so funny even thinking about, like,
No
okay,
cell phones.
oh God, yeah, no
We
cell
we
phones.
we joke about that at work all the time. Like, thank God we didn't have cell phones when I was a teenager.
Oh my God, the trouble I would
We
have
have no
been.
photographic evidence
I
for
know
anything.
exactly. Oh God, it yeah, there'd have been more regrets than I already
Right.
have if I
Like,
had a cell phone back then.
right.
But um, yeah, I just think of it as I think of being a kid, and like, and as an example, I would see a record once
Hmm.
and would think, oh, I'll get it later, whatever. You'd come back, it was gone. Well, that
Hmm.
fucking thing, it was literally gone. There was
Hmm.
no seeing that thing again on the internet. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right,
It was like you had to get stuff then. And
right.
yeah, um it was hit or miss back then. It was it was a lot more special in a way, but it was a lot harder to be a collector nerd. It was a lot harder.
Right, right.
Yeah. But it was a lot cheaper too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I loved them all.
Me
I,
too.
I guess, but you're right. There was that short window of my teenage
Like,
years.
yeah, it was like a
When,
certain period of time.
yeah.
What would you say, the 80s? And
Yeah, in
maybe
the
into
early
the
90s.
90s?
Into the
Yeah.
early 90s, because the last time uh, there was
So
a
maybe
mall.
maybe like 15 years or something, it was a thing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, maybe 95 for me.
yeah.
And then by 95, I was like, nah. There
So
was a,
all of us that kind of grew up in that window of time, that
know
was
what
like,
that's about.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I mean, you even look, going back to 80s movies, the fucking classic Fast Times at Ridgemont High is set in a mall.
Right.
It opens up in the mall. Like, it's like the whole entire movie, they keep coming back to the mall, and that's how it was. You know, everything was at the mall, the theater, the record stores, everything, the food.
And that's where everybody would kind of congregate, and
especially high school kids. That's what it's all about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There was. It's so weird to think about that stuff now.
Yeah. But I'm glad I grew up in that time.
I did too. I'm glad I had that time. I really am. It was special. I was talking to somebody about that not too long ago, about going to shows when I was a kid, and you know, before I could even drive, we were going to these. There was a thriving local music scene in Greensboro and Winston-Salem, and I lived in between those two cities, and it was all the time. We'd go to these punk rock shows, and there would be 3 bands for $3.
Oh, shit.
And you'd stay, you know, it'd go into the wee morning, and actually saw a lot of bands that ended up being legendary, you know.
Right.
And saw them in these little clubs sometimes.
And I love that.
Like a place that used to be a Chinese restaurant, and now you've got bands in there, and old warehouses, and I didn't realize how special that was until later, till I got older. It's like, oh wow, that was a cool time.
Definitely.
And you know, before cell phones, and which to me, cell phones ruined live music.
Right.
Nothing pisses me off more. But anyway.
Awesome. Yay. Oh, let me stop it. I'll call you.
Okay.
Oh, we have to say goodbye. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Wait.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Or talk to you next time.
All right. Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Prom Night. If you're not back by midnight, you won't be coming home. Rated R.
Now showing at a theater or drive-in near you. Check your newspaper for showtime.